Hello and welcome to the Branching Out podcast. I'm Celine Whitetail.
And I'm Gull the Cactus. Yeah, it is weird for me to say welcome to Branching Out, but welcome to Branching Out, the podcast where we grow in knowledge together. This week, our topic is Animal Crossing. Yeah, I have a brief history of Animal Crossing in my notes.
So do I, but probably not the same one that you do.
Okay. As an overview, Animal Crossing is a series that Nintendo made first in 1998, starting with Animal Forest, and apologies to anyone who speaks Japanese because I do not. Dobutsu no Mori is the Japanese name for Animal Forest. It was a Japan-only release initially because Nintendo thought it was too Japanese-centric and like too text-heavy for it to be appealing to a more international audience, because famously, Americans don't read. I say that as an American on a podcast with another American, and both of us have trouble reading. Either we choose not to, or we just can't because of like ADHD reasons.
Or both.
Or both, yes.
I both cannot read and also refuse to read.
Cannot, will not, refuse to. This game was remade in 2002 as Animal Crossing, which we know, we love. We played on Nintendo GameCube, except for Celine. She did not play it on Nintendo GameCube. She did not play it on any of these systems. I'm really excited to see what you have to say about Animal Crossing as someone who has never played a single one.
You know, the funny thing about that is that I still don't know anything about Animal Crossing. I never watched a single gameplay, like anything. I don't even know I do know what the game looks like, but like even when doing my extensive research, I researched something that was not anything about the game, really, Animal Crossing. So I still don't know how the game plays. I don't know anything about it. Even after having done having done 2 hours of research, still don't know anything about the game. So enlighten me.
Essentially, the point of the game, or the premise of the game, is about moving to and living in a new community that you become gradually more a part of and essential to. And that's a common theme throughout every version of the game, no matter how much or little customization of the like game world or town or island or whatever there is. Some common elements between most, if not all, of the installments include catching bugs and fish for the museum to turn into like exhibits. They live there. It's like a zoo more than a museum, really. So paying off your home loan and increasing your house size, buying enough goods from the local store to have it remodel and grow in size and goods availability, the real-time clock and calendar, and befriending the animal residents of your town to the point where they ultimately give you a portrait of themselves to signify your friendship, which I think that started in Wild World. I'm not sure it was in the original Animal Crossing, so it's not every.
Incredibly narcissistic, by the way.
It's so cute, though.
Is it cute?
It is cute.
It's not even a portrait of the two of you together to symbolize your friendship. It's just like, no, I'm going to give you a picture of myself.
The idea is they can still move away, because that's a big thing. That's a big element of the game. Villagers moving to and from your town. So if they move away, you have something to remember them by. I think that's the idea behind it. I don't know if there's like a cultural significance that we just don't understand. Maybe it's more common to like give like a small portrait of yourself to your friends. Like, I don't know, like in high school for my school, it was common when you got your senior portrait to hand out pictures to your friends and like trade them like Pokemon cards a little bit. But I don't know.
Sure.
I think it's cute because like they have like a little quote from them on the back and they say their birthday, and it's just it's nice.
I don't like the fact I do not like the fact that I can invest a lot of time and interest into a character just for them to leave. That is unfun gameplay to me, and I want it to be patched.
You can almost always get them to stay.
Forever?
Almost always, yes.
Even if you don't play for a while?
No.
Hmm. So, what you're saying is if I do not put constant reaffirmation into this friendship, they will not just stick around forever. They will find other interests and leave. Don't like it. It's too close to real
it's too
world.
realistic.
No, it's too realistic. Don't like it. So I actually already had a question for you.
Yes.
As someone, based on your description of what Animal Crossing is, as someone who has played Animal Crossing and Stardew Valley, which is a game that I have played, how much inspiration do you think Stardew Valley took from Animal Crossing? Because what you were describing to me sounds like the community center refurbishing.
It's a little less goal oriented than Stardew Valley is. As someone who has played Animal Crossing, Stardew Valley, and the most of, if not all of the Harvest Moon / Story of Seasons series of games, I will say the main inspiration for Stardew Valley absolutely was the original Harvest Moon series of games, especially ones like Harvest Moon 64 and some of the handhelds. I can see direct inspirations there. But there are definitely some shared elements.
Sorry, I just had a war flashback of a Harvest Moon 64.
Oh, that was one of my first games I ever played, ever. Because the Nintendo 64 was our first console. There are similarities for sure. It's definitely in the cozy genre, and there are crafting elements in the most recent one, but it's not a one-to-one. I see what you're saying, but the level of investment that you put in Stardew Valley is more gameplay oriented, I think, than than Animal Crossing, which is a little bit more I would say forgiving, because it's not as not that Stardew Valley is particularly hardcore as a game, but it's more hardcore than say your Animal Crossing, which is definitely a casual cozy game.
Okay.
So that was the first game, Animal Crossing, in 2002. It was on the GameCube. The second game was for the DS in 2005. It was Animal Crossing Wild World, which I said in my notes changed the game, which it really did. The fact that it was portable now, I think that portability is where Animal Crossing lives and thrives. The ability to take it with you, sit on the couch, and just or lay in your bed or whatever, or be in the car for a road trip and play Animal Crossing. That's important compared to being stuck on the floor in front of your GameCube, or later on the couch in front of your Wii as you were a little bit older or whatever. So Wild World did really well, and it introduced a bunch of characters who made their first appearances and would later, continue throughout the series, like Celeste, the stargazing owl, Brewster, the pigeon who runs the cafe, and Harriet, the poodle who does the haircuts at Shampoodle.
I know that you are a big handheld gamer. I used to be a handheld gamer because handhelds were we couldn't really afford big consoles when I was growing up. I had my computer, and then I had my handhelds. I had a Game Boy Color, I had a DS, I had we were a Nintendo household. I had a Nintendo 64. I had a Game Boy Color, I had a Game Boy Advance, I had an SP, then the DS Lite, and then the 3DS, and then that's about where I stopped. You were saying that you think that handhelds really broke it in for Animal Crossing by saying that you could just sit on the couch or in your bed. But I was just about to make a counterpoint, and I'm curious how you see these two things differently. Is that Animal Crossing started on the GameCube, which you can play traditionally, in front of a television while sitting in a comfy chair or on your bed or on the couch. So what is the difference for you between sitting in those comfy things and looking at the computer versus on a smaller screen in your hands?
I guess for me growing up, whenever we played, and it wasn't just my house, it was also friends' houses, family, etc. When we would play on consoles, it would be in front of the TV on the floor. Like it was always on the floor, and that was like the 64, the GameCube, the Wii even. Although the Wii you could get a little further away because it had the nunchucks no, the remotes and the nunchucks. So like once it started to not be wired, you could get a little further away, but I don't remember the standard controllers for GameCube and 64 being particularly long, and the way like everyone's houses were set up in like the 90s and early aughts, it seemed like you were sitting on the floor if you were playing those consoles. So maybe that was just me and everyone I knew, but that's kind of
No,
the difference.
I understand because the Nintendo 64, which is, I didn't have a GameCube, weirdly enough. That was the only console from Nintendo I think I didn't own. It might be the only one that I haven't owned, other than the original, like, brick Nintendo. I jumped from the Nintendo to I started with the color.
Mhm.
But I think genuinely, the GameCube might be the only Nintendo system that I have never owned.
Did
At
you own a
least
Wii U?
I had a Wii.
Okay. Yeah, we had a
So,
Wii. We never got a Wii U, and the Wii U was famously low selling, so
yeah,
makes
I
sense.
mean, I've had at least one of the generation of a thing. It genuinely surprised. I don't know what it was, because maybe I was PlayStation around the time of the GameCube.
I think it was PS2 and
Yeah.
GameCube.
Yeah, I had a PlayStation 2, and that's the only non-Nintendo system I've ever owned. It was all Nintendo all the time at my house up until the PlayStation 2. But then I never upgraded to the PlayStation 3. I went back to handhelds. But the point I was going to make with this was that I also agree with you that I think that a big reason why, even though you're playing on the same like surface of sitting, the Nintendo 64 at least controller was just a monster. That three-pronged monstrosity
Yeah.
was just a handful and a half, so I can understand why handhelds are still considered superior over the Nintendo. I don't know what the GameCube controller looked like, but I do know that the Nintendo 64, it felt like you could kill someone with it if you tried.
Yeah, the GameCube controller was fine. It wasn't. I know some people really like it, but I think people really like it because of like Super Smash Bros. Melee and like that popularity, because that was on the GameCube. But I don't really know. I can't comment too much about the controller because I just, I used it. But I think another thing that has to do with it is the amount of text that is in this game, because so much of it is dialogue, so much of it is talking to people. So I think there is something about like being closer. I think typically, and maybe this is changing because I think the prevalence of using subtitles on your TV is getting higher, especially as like a lot of shows and movies are just getting worse at sound mixing. And like it's like,
Oh,
what the
yeah.
did that person say? Like I can't hear
Mm-hmm.
over the background music. But so I think that is something that the tolerance is changing, but like in that era, closed captioning was not as good. So I think we weren't trained as much to read that much on console games. And like if you read a book, or you were reading on your like, dialogue in your hands in like one of the handheld consoles. I could be off on a random tangent, but I think that's part of it. Like you were used to like being closer
I genuinely
to your
don't know.
face.
Like I said, the only
Yeah.
games that I ever played when I was a kid was Pokemon, and although there is reading in that game, there aren't really stories going on in the Pokemon games. At least not until you get to like really Generation 5. I think 4 you can make an argument that it started there. And I mean, there are stories, yeah, but it's not like there isn't a whole lot of long trains of dialogue going on in Pokemon. Like, you'll have like your one big exposition dump, like at the kind of like 2/3 mark.
Mhm.
But the beginning, like, you got the beginning info dump, and then you basically got nothing for the next 2/3 of the game. And then the bad guy's evil plan is revealed, you thwart it, and then you got nothing till the end.
And Pokemon's mostly like very linear, so I don't
Mhm.
think you even need to read most of the games. Most of them. Some of them, there are definitely some more obtuse parts, and you're like, where am I going? Even if you have read what is happening. But I think that's more game design than it is like the willingness of the player to read in those instances that I'm talking about. Like I'm talking about there were times in Sun and Moon, I think, where I was like, what am I doing? Where am I going? But I think that's a game design thing rather than like me not reading.
In the older games, there's always a line of Psyduck stopping you from wherever you're not supposed to be going.
It's so true. They have headaches. They need their medicine.
Have headaches in a non-linear blocking path of where I'm trying to go. Have a headache somewhere else. Go lay in the water or something.
The next game after Wild World, which was amazing, stunning, made a lot of steps forward, was City Folk in 2008. And this is probably the one that I played the least. Came out on the Wii, and at that point, I was like, I don't want to sit on the floor anymore. Like I had gotten used to my life as a handheld Animal Crosser, and you know, I don't know. I would be interested to see if anybody in any of the comments had the same experience. I felt like City Folk just didn't grab me in the same way that the other ones did. And plus it was sandwiched in between Wild World and New Leaf, which were both so good.
I can give you a spoiler,
Mhm.
if I recall. Yeah, City Folk didn't sell it sold almost 4 times under every other game in the series apart from the original. So you're not the only one.
Okay, that makes sense to me. But I will say a lot of either there were new characters that would come back later, or they had new roles. And so you had Phineas, who was giving out badges. You had Kix, who was shining shoes. You had Lyle, who was selling insurance. Shrunk, who was a therapist. Who was handing out emotions at a club.
I'm sorry.
It kind of makes sense. Shrunk was an axolotl therapist. I think at that point he was a comedian. Maybe I'm making up that he was a therapist. Maybe I just think that the word shrunk, because of like head shrinking, that he was a therapist, and I'm just making it up. I don't know. I'm not gonna Google it either. I'm just gonna keep going.
To.
But he had this
he's
club.
a doctor.
It was called. Okay, that's what I thought. All right.
So
he had a club called Club LOL. And I don't remember if this was in City Folk or if this was in New Leaf, but he would have comedy shows every week. And every time you went to one of the shows, you would gain a new emotion, which was like an emote you could use for your character. And that idea of like you had to learn the emotes stays throughout and reoccurs in New Leaf and New Horizons as well.
So based on the 3 sentences of this wiki that I'm choosing to read, his doctorship is a lie and he should be going to prison because he never got a PhD. I don't know if it is illegal to falsely advertise yourself as a doctor.
Yes.
When you are not. Prison then, because he is a comedian who, as far as I can tell, never went to college, never passed the exam to become a doctor, but just gave himself the title of doctor and just decided that he was one. But weirdly enough, in Super Smash Bros. Brawl, he is titled as a traveling therapist and part-time comedian.
So maybe he did get his, his degree at some point.
Prison.
Although therapists are not actually doctors. Therapists have a social work degree.
It would be psychiatrist, would be.
Yeah, okay.
Where they would get the term doctor. So regardless, this little ugly bucktooth axolotl with the hairline of, I want to say the Monopoly guy, is a fraud and a sham. And I will be expecting a storyline where he gets arrested and taken to prison in the next game. Otherwise, the series has already failed me.
There are cops in Animal Crossing.
Take him away. Police officer, animal, I found the liar.
They're dogs. One is a bulldog and the other is like a, I don't know, just like a cop dog.
Get him. Get him, Canine.
They're Copper and Booker. It's cute.
That's adorable.
Anyway. Also Luna and LaBelle. So those are the the new or uh changed function special characters NPCs in City Folk. New Leaf came out in 2012 for the 3DS, and I wrote as my first bullet, "Such a good game," in all caps. It had an update in 2016 called Welcome Amiibo, which let you use amiibo cards and like the amiibo figures to add characters to the game.
Is that why we have 300 of them in our living room?
That's the start of it, yeah.
Okay.
The finish of it is New Horizons, which also uses the amiibo cards a lot.
Oh, good. Okay.
Mm-hmm. So this installation added town customization and building new buildings, and you are the mayor of your island, which was new because previously Tortimer had been the mayor, but he is retired and like was doing some shenanigans and was on vacation, and you come to town and Isabel's like, "Oh, you're the new mayor," and you're like, I was just moving in. You can't isn't this an elected position?" And you become the mayor.
Who elected you?
No one. You are a fraud.
Oh, so we go to prison.
Except you're a good mayor. So, does it really matter if you're not elected if you're a good mayor? Yes, it does. It does. The civil process and, like the ability for the people to vote is very important. So I'm putting that out there.
Not on my island.
And then in 2020, famously, New Horizons came out. March 20th, just after the start of COVID.
The COVID.
It sold millions of Switches. Like, Switches were out of stock. People were scalping the Nintendo Switch and the Nintendo Switch Lite because everyone wanted to fucking play Animal Crossing because we were all stuck at home. And it became, it boggles my mind. This became the 13th best-selling video game of all time. And it's absolutely due to the, just the timing of when it came out, the gameplay, and the ability to connect with other people on your island when you couldn't in real life. So it was like a perfect storm for Nintendo for this game, which is great because it came out so long after the previous one. It had a 2.0 update in November 2021, which added a ton to the game. It added a whole new DLC, Happy Home Designer, and you could like go to a different set of islands and do a bunch of other stuff. And it was magnificent. It was great. It came at the right time. So that is like my overview of Animal Crossing as a franchise.
And that's actually a perfect segue because since you presented last week, I'm presenting first this week.
Oh yeah.
And that is what my choice of topic was, which was Animal Crossing and the pandemic. Because I don't know anything about Animal Crossing. I still don't know anything about Animal Crossing. So when I randomly chose this topic by closing my eyes and scrolling through the Google Doc and just saying the first thing that I saw when I opened my eyes, I had no idea what I was going to do for this because I have never played an Animal Crossing game. But there is one thing that I did know about Animal Crossing was that it was huge in the pandemic. I didn't play a lot of games when I was younger. I've talked about it a little bit during the like pre-explanation. I stuck mostly to Pokemon games, and then when I got older, my games of choice changed to MMOs and MOBAs, things that were relatively cheap, but also had endless game possibility. Because again, I was not a family that went and bought a whole bunch of games. Like, games were kind of like, I grew up in a generation separation, so like video games were no part of my like ruling family's life, so they didn't understand video games and just saw them as a waste of time. So they didn't want to spend a lot on video games, so I had to find video games that I could play for hours and hours and hours without having to drop more money in order to buy them. So that was Pokemon, which came out with a new game every 2 years. and MMOs and MOBAs, where every 2 years I could drop $60 for an expansion and then play it for thousands of hours during that time. And MOBAs were usually free. I don't know if I ever heard the title of Animal Crossing, but I do know for the first time I remember hearing about it was when everyone in the world was talking about it during the pandemic. Everyone talked about Animal Crossing. Even people who had never played an Animal Crossing game. This thing was so huge. People just would not shut up about this game.
Uh-huh.
And I have a somewhat of an annoying trait that I don't know why it exists in myself, but I naturally stay away from popular things. And I don't know why. I don't think I'm the type of person that has like a hipster mindset where I can't like things that other people like, because there are some things that I definitely did get into when it was popular. I definitely watched Yuri on Ice when it got huge, and I don't watch anime. Like,
it's not like Pokemon is like some indie title either. Like Pokemon is one of the biggest like media franchises out there. So
exactly. So there are things that I like that everybody likes that comes out, but like, I don't know, maybe there's this thing where I'm afraid of being seen as like a groupie or a bandwagon follower, and I would rather choose to organically partake in something, even if it's 5 years after the current craze has ended and nobody cares about it anymore. But I at least know that when I go to choose to enjoy it, it's because I chose to, rather than... I am definitely the type of person that unfortunately can get very like... I can get media bias or outside bias from like if people say, oh, this thing is really good. I might be more likely to favor it, and also the other way around. If somebody says, oh, this thing wasn't very good, I unfortunately just sometimes can't part with that mentality. And so I need to give the big popular thing several years for it to like everything to be washed away from my memory, and for nobody to be like, oh, you should play this, it's really good. So that I can decide if I like a thing or not. But it also could just be that I'm insanely stubborn to the point of psychosis. And when someone says, you have to watch or play this thing, I know you'll like it, my brain immediately hates it out of pure spite for no reason. I don't know why. I hate being told what to do so much that if someone says, you will like this thing, I go, no, actually, I don't. I don't know anything about it, but I already don't like it. I don't know why I am like that. But
that is why I try not to do that around the household. Like I try to be like, oh, you've never seen that? Oh, okay. That's it. Because like I know. So, and I'll be like, oh, do you want to watch this? Instead of like, oh, we should watch this. I'm so excited.
The same could be said for Animal Crossing. I didn't own a Switch. Sorry. I did own a Switch when Animal Crossing New Horizons was released. I bought it for Pokemon Sword and Shield on its release because I thought that I was originally a Pokemon shiny hunting streamer, and I usually played older games, but I started back when the boom of Pokemon just streaming in general started with the 3DS with X and Y. It caused me to buy a 3DS. It caused me to get a modded 3DS so I could stream it. You know, I think about it every day. I probably have $2,000 or $3,000 worth of modded DSs, 3DSs, and just old Pokemon titles if I tried to sell them all right now. And I think about selling them pretty frequently.
The cat regularly knocks them off the shelf.
Yes, it gives me anxiety every time. Pokemon had long lost its shine for me at this point. X and Y never really grabbed me back again. I enjoyed it, but it didn't hold that same like grip that Yellow and Crystal and Emerald did for me. And it never really brought me back. And because of the price tag for the Switch plus the Elgato plus Sword or Shield, whichever one I bought, it didn't make me fall back in love with the game, and it like kind of put a sour note on like the Switch as a whole. It's why I refuse to use it kind of still to this day, and will like go through just about any length to emulate a game in a different way or play it on a different platform other than the Switch, because it weirdly annoys me how much I don't want to own a Switch. Like, I wish I had never bought it. I wish I had sold it during the pandemic when everybody was like selling their Switches for crazy amounts of money. I wish I had done it. Everybody wouldn't stop talking about it. There were news articles everywhere about how the games and soon the Switch were completely out of stock. And I lost interest very quickly. I genuinely couldn't tell you what I spent my time doing, what I did during the pandemic, because my life didn't change much. I was unemployed, lived in a very remote area, so like travel wasn't a normal thing, and having friends or family over also wasn't very normal. Because was such a trek to get there that nobody bothered. So I didn't really leave my house much anyway. And when the pandemic hit, it gave me a perfect, reasonable excuse to not leave my house anymore. And I didn't just sound like a crazy person. But regardless, I wanted to look into Animal Crossing New Horizons. The story behind its release I wanted to look into Animal Crossing New Horizons, the story behind its release and sale during the height of the pandemic, and how and why it became so popular, and if that is projected to trend into their next title, or if New Horizons was a one-hit wonder with the likes never to be surpassed again. To date, there have been 5 main series Animal Crossing games sold, which you went over. Animal Crossing, the original in 2001, Wild World in 2005, City Folk in 2008, New Leaf in 2012, and New Horizons in 2020. The reason why there is an 8-year gap between New Leaf and New Horizons because there were like 4 or 5 side games released instead of a main series one. While doing my research, the Wikipedia claimed that Animal Crossing, the original, was never meant to be a social simulation game. It was originally supposed to be an RPG, with dungeon delving being the main source of action. But I couldn't find a source to cite this, and other articles that I read said that the game came up as its concept was just a village, or it was like a square that everybody sits in, and you like do everything within that square. I did find an article from GameSpot about the development of Animal Forest, which would eventually become Animal Crossing. Its core system was centered around the release of a Nintendo 64 peripheral called the 64DD, which was supposed to do things like allow floppy disks to be playable on the Nintendo 64, have limited internet connectivity, and a real-time clock. The clock is the important feature here, as the core concept of the title, as they wanted to have days and seasons pass in real time. However, the peripheral was kind of an ambitious project and kept getting set back further and further until it was only released at the final year of the Nintendo 64's life cycle and was discontinued shortly after. Animal Crossing was released on a standard Nintendo 64 cartridge, with a battery-backed clock inside of the cartridge, which is probably the precursor to the Gen 3 Pokemon games and their internal battery clocks, but I don't have any sources to confirm that, and I don't actually know if that's true, but I'm assuming the technology came from that. It was eventually ported to the GameCube with the new name Animal Crossing, and saw new life. It would go on to sell 2 million copies with an outstanding IGN score of a 9.1. Wild World sold 11 million copies. City Folks sold 3.38 million copies. And New Leaf sold 12 million copies. New Horizons would go on to sell 44 million copies, more than all of its predecessors combined. 31 million of those copies were sold during the first 9.5 months during the pandemic. My question is, why? And of course, there's lots of psychological studies that explain why Animal Crossing was a good like surrogate for real life. I read probably the most complex article I will ever read in terms of
You read.
I read a I don't remember, I didn't look to see where it was from. Sorry, whatever college did this. There was a basic needs theory paper on why like Animal Crossing fit the three base psychological needs of humans, which is autonomy, relatedness, and competence. For autonomy, Animal Crossing offered an escape and distraction, freedom to artistically express oneself, and for people to set and fulfill their own goals. Relatedness, people were able to not only play with existing friends, but could develop parasocial relationships with the NPCs for us non-friend havers. And that was a direct, not the non-friend havers, but the direct quote from this article was developing parasocial relationships with the NPCs. And competence, even though there is no ending in Animal Crossing, it allowed for people to set goals and achieve them. So ultimately, my question was, why Animal Crossing? Why was this game the one that captured everyone during the pandemic? There are hundreds or thousands of open world, unending games out there that can fill this niche. Why was it Animal Crossing that just grabbed everyone?
I have some thoughts.
Go ahead.
I definitely think a big part of it was millennials were at the age where nostalgia for Animal Crossing, which we would have grown up on, would be like, oh, I could get this console. It's a handheld. It's not that expensive. It's not like I'm buying a PS5. And like, you know, relive a little bit of their childhood in like a modern setting when like comfort and soothing was needed. So I think part of it's nostalgia. Like millennials probably made up a significant portion of the base that was buying the game. I also think it was because I think it was well marketed as being like a cozy game that anyone could pick up. And that was something that like suddenly everyone had a little bit more free time. You were at home a little more. That's so weird. Why is that? And so I think it just was good timing all around in both like the release time relative to the original game's release and like getting that nostalgia factor, and also the amount of time we had to spend inside, social distancing. And this was a way to like, you could go to each other's islands, you could hang out with people and like be on a call with them and like have that little moment of connection even if you're not together physically. So those are my thoughts. This is so funny to me because you're doing the like thinking detailed like research topic, and I am going to be talking about my favorite NPCs and the weirdest NPCs and the implications, the conspiracy theory implications of their existence. And so it's just very funny because like it's like a reverse of what we were doing last time where like I did like the crazy research like in depth, and this time you're doing the crazy in depth research and I'm doing the like, oh, I'm going to talk to you about this seagull in a sailor hat.
I think it's because I had a base knowledge of Hades and Persephone for last week's episode. With this one, I know fuck all about the universe. So like I don't have a basis of knowledge, and I don't really learn things by reading words. I'm very much like a visual person, so even if I read through all of the Wikipedia articles about all of the villagers, I wouldn't have learned anything. And if I'm being totally honest, I might have if I hadn't already screwed up our schedule and forgot that we record on Sundays. So I was like, I for some reason thought that we recorded on Wednesdays. So I was like, I have time to sit and go through and find some weird niche YouTube videos about like, I bet Matt Pat's got a theory about Animal Crossing being weird. that I could bring to the table or like think about, but I didn't. And I was like, all right, I know nothing about Animal Crossing. What's the one thing I know about Animal Crossing? And this is where it got me this time. Because unsurprisingly, 90% of the things on the list of topics that we have, I don't know anything about.
But that's the fun part. Learning.
So here are the answers that I came up with based on my research. I think it's unfair to say that Nintendo is a lucky company. They have too many hit games for them to be lucky. You know, they have to know something, surely, about video game development. I don't know what that is, but they have to know something. But I definitely do think that, and Animal Crossing has, obviously, like, I don't know if 11 million copies or 12 million copies is a lot of a video game. I'm not really the type of person that looks into statistics of video games and sees like how many copies they sell and stuff like that. So like, do you know if like 11 million copies or 12 million copies in like 2008 was a lot? Or 2012, sorry.
You had Mario Kart at 7 at 18 million. X and Y, Pokemon X and Y at 16, Sun and Moon at 16, Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire at 14, New Super Mario Bros. 2 at 13, Super Mario 3D Land at 12, and then Animal Crossing at 12.5. So Super Smash Bros. For 3DS was after that at 9.5, and then like Ultra Sun and Moon and others. It was within the top 10 of best-selling games for the console.
I just want you to know my thought process was you started reading off the list of games and I'm like, wow, these are all Nintendo titles.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of forgot that Nintendo only releases games for its own console and nobody else releases. I'm too PC Master Race.
I mean, I don't think I'm looking to see if any of these on this list are the only one that is a third-party title. Actually, that's not true. Tamagotchi Life at 6.5 million. Lego City Undercover were third-party titles. Everything else is a first-party Nintendo title. Like it's Mario, it's Animal Crossing, it's Pokemon, it's Legend of Zelda, Nintendogs.
What was the highest selling title? It was 19 million. What was the lowest selling title?
Bottom of the best selling is Kirby Planet Robobot at 1.5 million.
Okay.
And of the third party titles, Monster Hunter 4 was over 4 million in 2013. So like a third of what Animal Crossing sold.
It was kind of in the middle, it sounds like it, but the middle of a giant, right? Because it seems like even their like mid-tier titles like Monster Hunter 4, get fucked Monster Hunter 4, which still sold 4 million copies. So, and I say this in the nicest way possible because they obviously are doing something right. They're not bad at making video games. 12 million isn't as impressive to me as it sounded, knowing that all of their games seem to sell really well. So it's like, it's almost not even Animal Crossing at that point that carries the brand. It's just people will just buy Nintendo no matter what it is. It seems like.
Definitely more for some titles than others. Like your Pokemon is going to be at the top and Mario is going to be at the top. You could see like Kirby was a little lower down and Fire Emblem was a little lower down and stuff like that because they're a little more niche. But Animal Crossing had, by that point, definitely become one of the things that was like a premier flagship Nintendo title for sure.
And then it blew it out of the water with New Horizons.
13th best-selling game of all time. Like, and that's not just like Switch game. It's like any game, which is crazy.
So yeah, my answer for why Animal Crossing, out of everything from the pandemic, why was this the title that captured everyone? I think it's because it's legitimately a game for everyone. You know, a lot of people can tout that title or try to say that a game is for everyone. I think a lot of people will say that Pokemon is for everyone, but I don't really actually know if it is. Because as a kid, I loved Pokemon. But I feel like I have definitely outgrown Pokemon and will really only go back to the older Pokemon titles that I remember because I loved them when I was a kid. But if you handed me a Pokemon game now, having never played a Pokemon game in my entire life, and asked me what do I think about like Pokemon Yellow, I would say it's kind of not good. Like it's very nothing. It's a grinding game above anything else. Like there isn't really a story in Pokemon Yellow at all. It's just a creature capture, which if that's your thing, maybe that will interest you, but it wouldn't be for me. Like I would play through it, be like, and that's it. Like I just had to grind my team up and there wasn't a story to follow or anything. And obviously the stories have gotten more and more complicated and like extensive as the game has gone on. But I actually don't think that older Pokemon games, base as they are for adults. I don't think that there's enough there.
Oh, sorry. I was
No,
just going
go
to
ahead.
say, it's interesting. I'm going to bring up a topic that is on our list of topics to talk about, which is Pokemon ROM hacks. And it's interesting that there's such a niche for like recreating and adding quality of life things to older games to make them more palatable to this adult audience that wants more challenge, that wants more to do, that wants more to the Pokemon game, but likes the older games. So like I absolutely think that is true. And most adults, if they're going back and replaying, I think are part of niches are either like shiny hunters, streamers, or ROM hack enthusiasts. I think that's probably where most of the replays come from. I could be
agree.
wrong about that.
No, I wholly agree. I was also about to bring up ROM hacks as an example of, I think that's why Pokemon has stayed so relevant as it has, because I think it would have fallen off pretty hard. The last couple generations of games have, as far as within my social circle, have kind of really fallen off, as like nobody really likes the new Pokemon games as far as I can tell. Like maybe I'm totally wrong and I don't know, I don't get the grander scope of Pokemon, but it feels like people didn't really like X and Y and further.
I liked X and Y mostly because it added fairy type. I thought that was a good addition. Sun and Moon I never finished. And then I actually am one of the people who loves Sword and Shield. I just found it very playable and I liked a lot of the new Pokemon. I just thought it was very fun. Scarlet and Violet is literally unplayable to me. Like it's and that makes me so sad because I want to like it so badly, but the performance is bad, the visuals are bad. I don't like most of the new Pokemon and there are a lot of them. I think the ones that I like are the Paradox forms, which are just new variant forms of old Pokemon. I don't like most of the new Pokemon, but you know, that's probably getting a little far away from Animal Crossing.
No, I mean, we're sitting and we're discussing things. It's a podcast. We're supposed to do that.
Yeah.
But no, that's what I'm kind of going with this topic, is that people tout that Pokemon is for everyone, but I don't necessarily know if it is. But Animal Crossing actually kind of is for everyone. Children love it because it's got a cute, zany art style. You have, animals that are talking to each other in like walruses and sweaters or whatever, and like it's got enough stuff going on that keeps kids with minimal attention spans engaged, and it's also honestly great for adults, as you brought up before, particularly millennials. Not because of the nostalgia factor like you mentioned, because so many brand new Animal Crossing players like picked up Animal Crossing New Horizons as their very first game when the pandemic hit. But millennials loved it because it offered what most of us can't afford to obtain: And I say this next part as a joke, but it is actually like rooted in seriousness. It offered a white picket fence house with a mortgage that we could easily pay off. Like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it was a world where if you worked hard, you could achieve every goal you ever wanted to achieve, regardless of what it was. And that is
I'm
something that, like,
vigorously shaking
yeah,
my head. Yes.
that is something
So
that
true.
really brought in adults back into this franchise. And it was why it was so big during the pandemic. Because, again, if we go back to autonomy, relatedness, competence, people wanted to be able to feel successful, feel like they had control in their lives, just be able to socialize without putting a danger to themselves or other people, and they just wanted escapism from the world. They wanted to go to a cute little world where there was no underlying violence, there was no bigotry, there was no, everything was positive. Because in games these days, even in cute little fun worlds, people like to put allegories for things, whether it be, you know, racism or sexism or war or violence of any kind. You know, every game wants to make a statement. And not saying that that is a bad thing, but I think that's why so many people loved Animal Crossing, because it just didn't have any of those things. It didn't, it feels like every place has to like pick a side of some sort of political debate, whereas in Animal Crossing, it's just a fun little island and you fished. But yeah, like, I think that's what a big reason why Animal Crossing did so well. It was an escapist's dream, which you can, and again, it kind of circles back to my question as to why was it Animal Crossing that did this, because arguably every game has escapism. Every game, there are tons of relaxing farm sims. There are tons of relaxing city sims. What was it about Animal Crossing? Was it really just because it was brand new? This cat is about to kill. No, she's fine. I thought she was about to just end her life on accident trying to
Oh
get off
no.
of my desk. And yep, okay, she's knocked my chapstick on the ground. And I tried looking because I figured somebody would have done an article about this. But nobody seems to have really delved into, like, people can explain why people played Animal Crossing. There's tons and tons of, that was your stuff falling on the floor. I don't know if you heard that. She has
What's
decided
up?
to, the stuff on the shelf, on the bookshelf.
Oh my god.
Yeah, remember that
Amber.
rowlet that you were showing to her?
She get it.
She didn't get the rowlet. She got all the stuff next to it.
Oh my god,
In
Amber.
you remember that video I showed you where she like contorted herself? She just did
Yeah,
it
I
again.
do.
Yeah, that's what she did.
Oh
There were so many different articles that explained why people picked up Animal Crossing in the psychological sense of, you know, obviously people needed escapism. They needed, they wanted just some peace and quiet, honestly. And they got it in Animal Crossing, but I just feel like there are so many other games. I just wish that there was an explanation as to, like, maybe it really was just lightning in a bottle, where it was handheld system, pandemic, it was brand new, and Nintendo is such a big company that it had word of mouth, like, this is Nintendo's new game. And as you kind of pointed out when you were going through the list of number of sales, Nintendo can sell just about anything and it will sell millions of copies, which probably helped.
Yeah, I will say, I think definitely the thing about timing is true, but I think the thing we didn't mention about timing is that not just that it was new, it's that people love to get in on something at the ground floor. So like if they can get in when it's new and like you don't have to have put in a year's worth of investment into it in order to be able to relate to people. People like being able to do things and be like, "Oh, I got my ladder today. I can finally climb up onto the third tier of my island." Like, and somebody else will be like, "I got my ladder today too." And, I think there's something about that shared communal experience that doing it all at the same time is just very gratifying to people, which is why, people watch Twitch. It's why people, when we were growing up, it's why kids would sit around the, Nintendo 64 together and play a game together. Like, watching a game and like experiencing something as a group is something, inherent to humanity. We want to feel connected to each other. And so that's that relatedness you were talking about.
I would be interested to see if Minecraft saw a resurgence during the pandemic.
I played Minecraft for the first time during the pandemic. I had never played it before. So absolutely, I think that's possible.
Because that's what I was thinking is like my whole argument for why Animal Crossing. Because it feels like Minecraft is Animal Crossing, but better in terms of like, specifically in the context of a pandemic game, because it is something that you can heavily mod, so you can play it multiple different times in multiple different ways and have it be different. It allows for the social aspect. It allows for seasonal changes. Well, not seasonal changes isn't a thing, but like daily differences, allowing for essentially an unending gameplay loop where the ending of the game is only really decided by you and when you're done with it. So
I have two main arguments against Minecraft.
Okay.
Based on what you have said.
I also have some own arguments against myself, but go ahead.
Yeah, we're going to go back to portability. I think like being on the Switch, especially with the Switch Lite coming out, it was perfect because it was not super expensive until it started being very scarce. You could sit on the couch and do it. Whereas mostly like you could play Minecraft on the Switch. It sucked. I tried. It was bad. But then the other thing is the modding is like a double-edged sword because people who are not as tech savvy don't want to have to play with anything in order to be able to play their game. They want to turn it on and play. And so I think that is an advantage to Animal Crossing because unless you have a hacked Switch and you are already in that like level of, tech savvy, you're just going to play the game. And you press the start button and you click A and you go. So I think that is what makes it more universally appealing because some people don't want to have that level of involvement with their games. And that's fine. Like, whatever people want to do.
Yes, I was also going to make the portability issue argument. I also had an argument against it is that I think Minecraft has a bit of a stigma against it as only being for kids / annoying teenagers as well.
Also possible.
Which I don't think that Animal Crossing had because it was sort of a single player game mostly up until that point. Or like, I don't think, and this could be totally wrong, so I'll ask you, the expert of Animal Crossing. In like New Leaf and City Folk, was there extensive online compatibility? And did people use it a lot?
Technically, I think the online, I can't remember if Wild World you could do local. I can't remember if you could do online with the DS. But technically, all the way back to the GameCube, you could travel to other people's towns. It was convoluted as hell. I only did it like once or twice with a friend. But you could save your character going on the train to your Nintendo GameCube memory card. Take the memory card out and plug it into your friend's GameCube and arrive at their town. But like that is so convoluted compared to like what you could do now over the internet. But yeah, there's always been an element of being able to visit other players throughout the series. It's just the ease with which you could do that became a lot simpler over time. New Leaf, it was pretty easy. You could like spot pass people That was actually a very big thing for a long time because like you could get people's houses in your like house showcase, and like you could buy furniture from their houses if you went to visit them. So like Spot Pass was a big deal. You could visit people online, and you could also do local multiplayer with New Leaf, and it was pretty easy. I would say it was about as easy to do that as in New Horizons, but New Horizons, you always had to be friends with the people in New Leaf. New Horizons, they have the Dodo code system, which allows you to go to anyone's island if they have it open and you have their code. So that made it so much easier to connect with people around the world. And when everybody was into Animal Crossing, you would make friends with people at random because they had an item you needed and were willing to trade you. So there was like a very global sense of community and multiplayer in the early first year of Animal Crossing New Horizons. My presentation is a special one. I'm going to be talking about my favorite and also the weirdest NPCs in Animal Crossing and the implications of their existence on the world of Animal Crossing. So the first one is Gulliver. He's a seagull, which I don't know if you know this, but like I have a particular affinity for seagulls, considering like there was a seagull sticker on my pot and my name is Gull because that's like my identity as a cactus. So, you know, Gulliver, it's funny, Gulliver was always my favorite character, even from the beginning, which is so funny because so many people find him really annoying. He is a sailor who is like the worst sailor ever. He's also sometimes an astronaut, but he doesn't want to go back to space. He, about approximately every week, would wash up onto the beach of your town or island, depending on the game. And you would wake him up, and when you woke him up, he would tell you a tale of like, oh, I fought a sea monster, or I got caught in a hailstorm or something crazy. And like, he ended up overboard every time. And his crew never really like tried to get him back immediately, probably because he's the worst sailor of all time. And so he would thank you by giving you a piece of furniture and then walk around your beach until he got picked up by his ship. And then it would repeat basically every week.
My immediate question was going to be, how was he paying for a new ship every week? But apparently it just seems like every villager inside of Animal Crossing is a liar, and also a multi-professional liar. Because I'm sorry, sailor and astronaut?
Yes. Well, okay, he's an astronaut in Wild World and City Folk. So instead of being shipwrecked, he is in a UFO that will like fly above your town. And the reason, I don't know like the real reason this happened, but like Wild World was, you know, they were showcasing the DS. Like part of the game was you could look up in the sky, and that was so cool. And that aspect comes into play with Celeste as well, who's another NPC I'm going to talk about. But they were really into like you can use the second screen to look up in the sky, and like you would shoot him down with your slingshot, which is kind of funny. And then you would have to find the parts to repair his spaceship because you did shoot him down. So that's kind of only fair.
That's government property. Why aren't we in prison?
There is no god, no masters in Animal Crossing.
Then why are we still using a money system?
Because that's, you know, not on my list of conspiracies and implications, but I think we could argue that Tom Nook is the originator of the Bell system. And it's essentially, since he controls the supply of goods into the towns or islands, he is basically creating his own currency and getting all the wealth. But at the same time, he's also giving you a 0 interest loan and no period of time to repay it. So like there's give and take there. Like he's not a slumlord as some people characterize him as, but he is definitely like he's making profit. Like, so yeah. But anyway, Gulliver. His name is Johnny in Japan, which is cute.
Wait, is his name Johnny in Japan, or his name is Johnny also in Japan?
In the Japanese version of the game.
Okay.
His name is Johnny. Sorry.
Understood. No, understood.
And in New Leaf, he would tell you trivia about the real world human countries that he was supposed to be going to. And if you guessed the country correctly, you were rewarded with an item from that country. And some items include a replica of the Statue of Liberty, which is larger than you. A replica of the Eiffel Tower, which is larger than you. A life-size sarcophagus. A huge nutcracker. A Merlion statue that looks like it's real life size. So like he was getting some like museum grade artifacts and goods and like just giving them to you through the mail because you saved his life. So interesting. And then in in New Horizons, he has you find his communicator parts so he can text his crew to pick him up, and you have to dig them up from the beach.
I have 2 questions.
Yes.
1, have any of the Animal Crossings ever been voiced?
They are all voiced. I'm gonna mimic what they do. They talk kind of like
So like Sims.
yes, but less annoying than the Sims. And I say that with all the love in my heart as a Sims player. Was introduced in Animal Crossing New Horizons, and he is a pirate captain who looks like Gulliver, except his eyebrows are bushier and he's a little meaner looking. And he also washes up on your shore potentially every week and needs you to dive for his phone. Initially, the player in New Horizons mistakes Gulliver for Gulliver because they look the same and they have almost the same name, but they are allegedly not the same. And they are potentially, but not canonically related. So, Gulliver's name is probably at least a two-part reference. It could have multiple references. The first part is that it's a seagull. That's pretty surface level. The second is likely a reference to the 1726 story called Gulliver's Travels by Jonathan Swift. This was about a man who travels the world and is shipwrecked on the shores of a previously undiscovered land. So you can see like the implications there and like what the relation would be. And in Japanese, his name is Johnny, which is a nickname for Jonathan, which is quite likely a reference to Jonathan Swift, the author of Gulliver's Travels. There's also, the wiki also says it could be a reference to Jonathan Livingston Seagull, which was a book in the 70s by somebody named Richard Bach, who I have never heard of this book, so I don't know. You know, could be, maybe, I don't know. But interestingly enough, Gulliver, throughout the games, has made references to things like Pinnacle Rock from Majora's Mask, Rico Harbor from Super Mario Sunshine, Bobbery of Rogueport from Paper Mario and the Thousand Year Door, and tons of other Nintendo titles. He is... Either that means that Nintendo is canon inside of Animal Crossing, or Gulliver is capable of breaking the fourth wall. And that is my implication for him, in addition to the fact that, is there a NASA in Animal Crossing? Is it manned by humans or animals or both? Because he was an astronaut. Is he capable of coming into our world? Is he a seagull who works for NASA?
Are there any humans in Animal Crossing?
The only confirmed humans in Animal Crossing are the player characters. Everyone else is an animal or is of undeterminate species. Yeah. So the implications of Gulliver, mind-boggling. He said he met Bobbery of Rogueport, who is from Paper Mario and the Thousand Year Door. How'd he do that? How'd he get there? There aren't talking seagulls, to my knowledge, in Paper Mario. Although there could be, because there's like people who are animals in Paper Mario and Mario games. So who knows? Could be. But still. Yeah, turtles. Mm-hmm. But, you know, and Miss Mouse, she is a mouse. That's true. That's true. But, you know, how did he do that? How did he get there? Are all Nintendo games connected? Do they share a same world? Or can he travel through space and time?
I don't know.
I don't know either. These are the mysteries that I would like to uncover. But I don't know how. So, my second favorite NPC is Celeste, the astronomer owl. Do you see how cute she is in that image look how cute she is. She's got a little bow. She's like a reddish pink color. She's got the little plaid. She's just so she's adorable. She is the sister of the museum proprietor, whose name is Blathers. In Wild World and City Folk, she ran the observatory as part of the museum. And as I mentioned before with like the usage of the top screen on the DS, in Wild World, you could actually connect the stars together in the observatory and make your own constellations. I think you could do that in City Folk too, but I'm not sure. It was cute. But it also, raised the concern of like players trolling each other by like drawing dicks in the sky and like kids getting that and sadness or whatever. The wiki for Animal Crossing says she has a crush on Tom Nook. It does not source this, and I simply pretend I do not see it because I can't handle that information, so we're moving on from that. In New Leaf, she ran the museum shop and the exhibit rooms that the player can create their own displays in and make their own museum displays. And then in New Horizons, she visits the player's island randomly at night or specifically during meteor showers and gives the DIY recipes for star items and zodiac furniture. And so for me, I was like, the implication here is like the zodiac still exists, but humans created the zodiac to have like represent different aspects of animals that they were personifying. But in this world, animals are the people for the most part. There are humans, but there aren't very many of them. So the zodiac is still based on animals, even though animals in this world are bipedal and sentient for the most part, unless you're a fish or a bug. So it's just like, that raises some troubling questions.
Why?
Because the zodiac furniture still represents like bulls, like Taurus as like a bull on 4 legs, or like, I can't remember any of the other zodiac, but like other things that like are canonically villager species as like the animal version of them. So does that mean that like there are the animal versions of the animals that are people in this world in addition to?
It could be evolution. They could have been kind of like, we theorize. Is it a theory or is it proven that humans came from monkeys?
It's not that humans came from monkeys, it's that we share a common ancestor with monkeys.
Well, yeah, that's my point, is that that's kind of the same thing, right? Is that humans branched off from a really old primate, pre-human, whatever, and monkeys and humans exist in the same world. And we're close,
sure,
but we're not the same. So I would assume it's kind of like that, where there are still like bipedal cows, but also upright thinking cow people, in the same way that there are monkeys and humans within the same, like in the same right now in the world, right this moment. Yes.
Okay, so if you are a cow villager, and there are cow villagers, does it make it cannibalism? And I'm going to bring up cannibalism again later. Does it make it cannibalism if you eat beef?
I would say yes. And well, okay. This goes into a whole different topic about like, is cannibalism actually wrong? And do we only think that it's wrong because we as a society have kind of tabooed, and we think that like intelligence seems to be a big factor as to why we don't like to eat certain, or like our attachment, like we don't eat dogs and cats because we have ordained them as pet animals, whereas cows and sheep are like the same level of intelligence surely as a dog, but just as a society we have chosen dogs as our companion animals and cows as our food animals.
Well,
just like we haven't decided that monkeys are food animals. They're kind of like wild animals?
I think specifically with dogs and cats, there's a level of domestication and like co-evolution that happened with them, and dogs are further along than cats, if I recall correctly, like by thousands of years. And it was this co-evolution that allowed humans and dogs to become more closely tied in terms of working together. And in breeding and domesticating dogs, we kind of made them more suitable to be friendly to humans versus wild, quote unquote, animals or livestock animals. So I think there's like a lot of biological like implications there that like you and I just don't have like the biology degree to talk about, but like I think that like stuff is there. But like if we take your premise as true about evolution, that's bonkers, because it means that like there were so many different like progenitor species that were capable of sentience, or it means that all of the sentient animals are kind of related, and maybe the like phenotype, the physical traits of them are kind of more superficial than they are essential to their being, and maybe they're not a bunch of different species, they just have a bunch of different phenotypes. But either way, it's kind of bonkers. I'm going to go on to something else that is bonkers, which is Blanca the cursed cat. So do you see in the pictures that I've sent you the cat with no face?
Yes, I do.
What is your immediate reaction? And is it abject terror?
No.
Because that is a cat that can talk to you without a face.
Is it telepathic?
No. The implication is that she could still talk even though she doesn't have a mouth.
Right, so telepathically.
No, it's like, it's audible. So like other people can hear it.
What if it's group telepathy?
I guess it could be group telepathy, which would tie into some of the more magical things that I'm going to talk about later in my implications. But you can draw her a new face, and then she can talk with the mouth that you draw on her face. How does that sit with you?
I don't know. Stuff like that doesn't really bother me because it's a fantasy world where animals are talking anyway, so like to me, it just seems like a fun kids edition of, oh, you can draw whatever face that you want and it'll talk and blah, blah, blah. Like, that just seems like a thing that was, like, garnered for kids. So it doesn't immediately sit, like, as weird to me. But again, I don't know the lore of Animal Crossing that well, so...
Mm-hmm. Well, the thing about Animal Crossing is there is not that deep of a lore. You kind of have to, like... there's not, it doesn't give you a lot of backstory. Sometimes people are just like, oh, there's the faceless cat, she showed up again, oh, you should draw her face, oh, okay. But Rover, who is a cat that you meet on the train most of the time, does make reference to a very weird cat being around, and the thought is that it's probably Blanca that he's talking about. The wiki does say that she might be a reference to a faceless yokai, which is called, and again, excuse me, anyone who speaks Japanese, I do not, Nopera Bo, which is said to copy the appearance of someone's family member and appear to them with their back turned, and then when approached, turned around, and they have no face. And then they disappear harmlessly after the fright. So it's not like, they're not trying to kill you, they're just trying to scare you a little bit, which is like kind of freaky. The implications here, horrifying. I don't have anything really deep to say. I just wanted to mention her because that's like the weirdest to me Animal Crossing character. It's a little creepy. The next NPC I have is Franklin the turkey. He first appears in Animal Crossing for GameCube. He appears on Thanksgiving and is hiding behind houses and trees from the townsfolk because they want to eat him. They say he's the guest of honor at the meal, and they want to eat him. What the fuck? So you have to steal the knife and fork from the banquet table and give this to this man. And he rewards you with pieces of furniture for saving his life from cannibalism. If it is cannibalism, truly. But eventually, this evolves throughout the games. In New Leaf and New Horizons, he runs the Harvest Festival instead of being scared of being dinner for the Harvest Festival. And that's great because, you know, he shouldn't have to fear for his life at Thanksgiving. Yeah. And his name
No
is
one should have to
probably
fear for their life at Thanksgiving.
it's true. It's very true. He's probably named Franklin because allegedly, and I think this is a myth, I don't think this is actually true, but allegedly Benjamin Franklin had wanted to make the turkey the national bird of the United States. Also, this is a cute little fun fact. His birthday is October 10th, which is around when Canadian Thanksgiving can be, because it falls on a different day every year. So like that's cute. It's like a little connection there. So yeah, the implication here is cannibalism. And how your friends, the animals, want to eat. And the mayor wants to eat this turkey. He's a man. He's a person. But just because he looks like a turkey, you want to eat him? Is it still cannibalism if everybody else is not a sentient turkey? Is it only cannibalism if you eat the sentient turkey while being a sentient turkey? Or is it the sentience, the fact of the matter that we should not be eating other sentient creatures, regardless of whether or not they look the same as us?
Well, I guess it depends because it's kind of the same issue with Pokemon, right? Where I'm not up to date on my Pokemon lore, but as far as it seemed, there weren't any non-Pokemon animals in the world. It was all Pokemon.
Mm-hmm.
And they would eat Pokemon in that world. Like there were multiple different Pokedex entries about how Magikarp was delicious and stuff like that. That's the one that I remember.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess it depends if there are any actual farm animals in Animal Crossing, or if the entire world is just sentient people that are animals. But then even that's like that could get into some really dark territory of like deciding what quote unquote race of animals are the ones that are considered for eating, unless everyone is up for eating. And then that just turns Animal Crossing into a dystopian universe of survival of the fittest. Everyone's up for dinner if you don't watch your back. So
yeah.
And I just don't want to think about it in this nice little social simulator, so.
Oh, absolutely. And there is a level of facetiousness that I am taking with all of these implications and these conspiracy theories. It's just like when you think about it a little too hard and you get like game theorizing, it just is like, what? That's weird. Like they really did say in the first Animal Crossing that they wanted to eat Franklin. Like that's fucked up.
He doesn't even look that tasty.
He's so nice and he's so nervous. That poor man. That poor turkey man. The next of my NPCs, the second to last, is Wisp the Ghost. Now, if you see Wisp, he looks kind of like a boo. He doesn't look like a person. He doesn't look like a human. He doesn't look like an animal. He's just like a blob with arms and a tail like a boo from Mario. So that kind of gives credence to like Gulliver's right, and we're all in the same Nintendo universe as all the other games because this is a literal boo. Or it just means, what the fuck? He appears at night in all of the games but Animal Forest and Wild World, and he works for a boss that he's scared of, which is like, okay, who is that? Who are we talking about now? But he is also, to be fair, afraid of everything, including ghosts, and he is a ghost, so, you know. But the implication here is death? Ghosts? Ghosts are real? And he literally does phase in and out. Like when you satisfy his requirement, which is finding the spirits that he has lost, either because you scared the spirit out of him or because he has lost them and needs to return them to his lamp and they belong to someone else instead of being part of him. He like does a little flip and disappears out of existence. So like he is a ghost. For real. But he's a friendly ghost, so I mean it's like, you know, he didn't die in a terrible passion, probably. Yeah, so that one's just a little weird. It's like, okay, ghosts are real. That's weird.
Yeah, but that's like pretty normal in Japanese culture games because they believe very heavily in spirits and the extended life of their ancestors and stuff like that. So I don't think it's weird to have ghosts in a Japanese-based game, even if it's a kid's one.
That's fair. And he is 100% completely friendly. Like, there's no bit of him that is not friendly. Like, Wisp is, like, without a doubt, one of the friendliest NPCs that you meet ever. But yeah, my final NPC that I wanted to talk about is Katrina. She is a Black Panther and a fortune teller. An interesting part of the, you know, all Nintendo games are connected in the same universe theory is she has a lot of Legend of Zelda references in her tent. Like sometimes she has the pots from like actual games. The Triforce is represented in different places, and there's just like other things that tend to be from Legend of Zelda. And it's like a cute little, you know, Easter egg for people who know. And it's also very cool decorations. Her tent is always cool. But it's like, oh, so is Hyrule around here somewhere you could travel to? The girlies want to know. But she is able to predict your future and see your fortune, and that affects the literal luck in the game. And if you get a bad luck fortune, you start tripping and like you get stung by bees more, and you know, bad things happen to you as a result of your luck. So like luck and magic and, you know, fortunes are real, are the implications of her. She can even affect your relationship with villagers for bells, which is like, so the bells, if they were made up by Tom Nook, has, you know, some interesting considerations for how money can be used to, you know, change literal friendship. But anyway, but the reason she's less like deep implications and conspiracy theories and more, I wanted to end on her because she has this dialogue pattern where it seems like she's kind of saying a little bit of nonsense to be mystical, but there is a quote that she ends her like fortunes with in Animal Crossing New Horizons that became a very popular tattoo for a lot of people. And I don't mean that in like a derogatory way. Like that's just like, I saw a lot of people get this tattoo. Like, and it's even though it sounds like nonsense at first, it's like a really comforting message when you think about it. And the quote is, "And remember that bad times are just times that are bad." And I think that's like a really good message from Animal Crossing and a way to sum up like the ultimate viewpoint, the perspective of this game. So even though I was, you know, making jokes about like death and ghosts and like cannibalism, ultimately this game, even if it has some things that are a little bit weird and a little bit unexplained, ultimately the point of the game is like to take your time and to engage with others and to make time for peace for yourself. And that's just a really good message. And I think is really important, especially as like a lot of societies are just like, you know, having some trouble in our modern world. So like, especially with this coming out during the pandemic and like all the implications you discussed at length, I think, you know, that core phrase, I think there's a reason it resonated with so many people. And, you know, even though we were going through some severely bad times, and bad times will continue to happen to everyone throughout their life, because that's just how life goes, bad times are just times that happen to be bad. They are not inherently evil or negative or, you know, indicative of anything more than just a rough patch, and you'll get through it. And I love that. And I love Animal Crossing.
It seems to genuinely just be another cozy game of very in tune with farm sims, of where you just kind of turn your brain off and you don't really have to think too hard about story or progression in terms of like, I have to go to this specific thing and I have to optimize this, this, and this, and I have to get this item from this place. And you just are like, you know what I'm going to do today? I'm just going to sit in front of the TV. I'm going to turn on my favorite podcast channel, Branching Out, and I'm going to listen to their episodes while I fish for 2 hours. And that's great. You know, it's good to have that kind of... I'm always a huge proponent of just head empty media, because that's the kind of thing that I like. I don't like to think very hard. I don't need anything to be a secret, or everything to be a secret allegory or message, or everything to be super complicated. You know, and I believe you have redeemed Animal Crossing on my stream, so one day I might get to see this magic for myself in 10 years when I get to it. But yeah, that has been Gull and I's discussion about Animal Crossing. I hope you enjoyed. We definitely, when we recorded the first episode, we felt like we did not interact enough, so I definitely made it a point to engage more with topics, and Gull did as well, so hopefully that brought... It definitely made the episode longer. We're at almost 2 hours of recording right now, and I really don't think a lot of it's gonna get cut, so you know, we'll see where it ends up with. I suspect we're at an hour 50 right now. We'll probably finish at an hour 55, and I wouldn't be surprised if we end up with like an hour 40 of this episode. But I also think it was just a more entertaining episode overall. If nobody minds the humble brag, I think this episode was better.
I love Greek mythology, but like I think we both know more about video games. So like there was more for us to talk about. Like there were more things for us to relate to. We talked a lot about Pokemon, we talked about game systems overall, you know.
Yes.
There was more to personally relate to. So I had a blast. I thought this was great.
I love Greek mythology and everything, but I'm not a reader, and I'm also not like, I'm just not very educated. So like a more educated person, she's shaking her head, but I think it's okay, and I've said this before, I think it's okay to call yourself uneducated, because I'm not very educated, and I have no strive to be very educated. Like, I don't want to be like big brain smart, really. Like, that's not really what interests me, and it's not really my thing, so I'm okay with being uneducated. I don't see it as like an insult or a downplay to me. But I'm not like well read and like well educated in terms of like, I don't know, like a smarter person or a more educated person than me could have made the same connections between other historical stories or other religions that I made in Animal Crossing and like Minecraft or Pokemon or whatever. Just because I don't know as much.
I just think the reason I was shaking my head is because there's like implications to the word, and I've said the word implications like 60 times this episode, but
put a counter on the screen.
Yes.
Don't make me do that.
You know, the subtext to the word uneducated is that like there's an unwillingness to be educated, which I don't think is the case for you, because even if we're not talking about traditional education, like going to college and getting your undergrad and getting your master's and PhD or whatever, we're not talking about that. Like, you delved in deep for this episode to research and talk at length about something that like had actual academic you know, rigor to at least parts of the topic. So I think
skimmed one .edu article, and there were a lot of paragraphs, and I read the first 3 sentences of the summary paragraph. Don't be fooled.
I think there was a willingness to learn, and that is what this podcast is about. You have a willingness to learn about things that interest you, and I don't think the unwillingness to learn about things that don't interest you prevents you from being educated. You know what I mean? Like,
Sure.
there's so many people who don't consider traditional education to be interesting to them because they don't have topics that relate to their experiences or touch them in some way, and they get unfairly, I think, termed as being uneducated or not smart or like whatever, not good at school, even though there's so many different ways of being intelligent and different ways to interact intelligently with the world. So I just want to be careful. I don't think that you're being fair to yourself when you say you're uneducated, is my point. I think as long as you are willing to learn, you are capable of being someone who is highly educated, regardless of the level of status and the papers you have framed on your wall. I think that's important to me, and that's true.
You were trying to compliment me, and I disassociated and got distracted, so I started looking around the room like, what can I stare at? And I was like, that painting. I wonder what it is of.
Thank you all so much for listening. Next week, our topic will be Plato philosophy. Celine chose philosophy, and she was like, I don't know which philosophy we should do. And I was like, let's start with Plato, because I've read Plato. I've read Symposium. I've read some of the other ones that I can't remember off the top of my head. So I will be coming in with quotes and stuff, and it'll be fun.
I'll be coming in with bad takes.
I think you're going to hate Plato, and that's fair because initially in freshman year of high school, when I first learned about Plato, we all hated Plato because we thought he was a fucking asshole. And you can come back around to be like, he might have been a little bit right, but he might also have still been a little bit of an asshole. So, you know, it's fun. It's fun. Philosophy is fun to consider. But yeah, thank you so much. You can follow us on all the links that Celine is going to include everywhere in the description. I'm at Gull the Cactus on all the social medias.
I'm at Celine Whitetail on all the social medias. What are you, got any plans for this week?
This week I am drawing for your Patreon and writing new ASMR for your Patreon. And if I do say so myself, her ASMR Patreon, her ASMR work has been popping off, and I may or may not have written some of the work that she voiced that has been popping off. So check it out if you are so inclined.
Mm-hmm. We've been very fortunate that a specific ASMR, we did a modern day maid service ASMR that was like barely tangential to maid. Maid was the concept I gave her, and very non-maid ASMR is what came out of it. But I guess it just got very lucky with being in a lot of people's like YouTube homepage for people who usually look for ASMR, and it blew up and it's been doing really well. So yeah, if you are interested in roleplay ASMR, I do that on YouTube and it's been going great. As usual, I have a couple of announcements of updates. My Fansly streams should be happening hopefully within the next month or so. I finally got in touch with my rigger, who just finished 2 big commissions and went to a convention this weekend. And I was able to pay him. He finally gave me a proposal. So that is currently in the works. My artist finally gave me my summer. I don't mean finally in a bad way. I mean finally in an excited way. Finally gave me the art for my summer. So the next time that you guys see me, I think I'll look different. Summer is on the 20th of June, and I will have evolved into my summer form. So I'll look a little bit different on the video version of the podcast if you're watching this on the YouTube. Gull and I wrote a short story for the Patreon, for the higher tiers of the Patreon, and have turned it into a 17,000 word short story that I will be reading and recording, and I think that's going to be the bulk of what I do. So my voice might be shot come Sunday, but we'll see.
Make
Very
sure to
excited about
hydrate.
everything. The thing I'm notoriously bad at doing. Yeah, thank you everybody for watching. This has been Branching Out with Celine Whitetail.
And Gull the Cactus. And remember, keep learning. Yeah.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Mwah.